Thanks to the folks who supported the 2025 September Subathon, Sonic 06 multi-world record holder Nick867 and I are back to race the original game against its fan remake, Project 06. Last time, we saw in Sonic's story a bunch of insane tricks on both fronts, with P06 being more of what you'd expect in a Sonic game, and retail, well, it's probably best to see for yourself. What? This go-around will be running Shoutou's story, and the combat-focused hedgehog is just as different between games as Sonic is. And while P06 Sonic won in real time versus Retail 06 Sonic winning in game time, let's see if the edgelord evens things out a bit more. Let's get started. In 3, 2, 1... Let's go! The opening stage, White Acropolis, highlights the main gameplay difference between the two 06s, Shadow's base movement. In Project 06, he controls almost identically to Gemless Sonic, which means we have access to the awesome spam dash to keep up the speed. Though, Shadow is actually 2 units of speed slower than the blue guy, and 4 units slower at max spin dash speed, some ultimate life form. His jump dash also works exactly the same as Sonic's, and with the fan game's customizable types, we are of course using Legacy just like Sonic does. And it's actually more important for his run, as we'll see in the coming stages. In Retail 06, Shadow doesn't have the spin dash, and given the game's low top speed for most characters, Nick's going to be doing a lot of this. Shadow's jump dash is actually longer than Sonic's in the OG game, and it's actually not a glitch, sorry for that misinformation, I thought it was with what I knew at the time, so it's a pretty cool way to differentiate them. In P06, they go the same distance regardless of the type though, but it'd be cool to add it back in Chaos, wink wink nudge nudge. Back to the stage. On the P06 side, the Snowy Peak is a fast-paced spin dash down the slopes with a jump or two to avoid some laser gates. We then spin dash jump to the switch, go through the door, and use the tornado kick to very quickly take out the enemies to open the portal. Don't worry, I'll be talking about this move later, but for now, just know it destroys foes very fast. In Retail, Nick's doing lots of until he gets to the door. Seems pretty unfair with how quickly P06 Shadow can move versus here, but in OG, the Faker has a huge trick up his sleeve. The ability to make not just doors, but also walls a suggestion. Introducing pause clipping. When Shadow's up against 2 walls, the more vertical the better, you can jump and pause the game at the same time, hopefully on the first frame of the jump. If successful, spamming A to continue the game and immediately jump dashing after causes Shadow to go through the collision. As you can no doubt guess, this is an extremely useful tool for his stages. So Nick gets to save just a little bit of time on P06 by not having to grab the switch to open the door. We see a difference in the 2 games again with our main hog's Chaos attack, the 5-hit combo he does after homing attacking an enemy. In P06, Shadow's combo ends once the enemy is defeated, but in Retail, if Shadow homing attacks a 1-hit point enemy, he can then initiate his Chaos attack to target the next nearest one. This is what's happening here, and on top of that, the red robot is a leader, a mechanic in both 06s where in certain groups of enemies, defeating the elite type will also destroy the ones around it, opening the portal to Section 2 for Nick. After a short gliding section with Rouge at the start of the base, both games switch back to Shadow. The goal here is to destroy all 5 searchlights. In Retail, Nick does this by hopping into a nearby buggy and sniping them with the shots. The missiles have a really long range before they explode, so he can hit them all from the spawn point with proper positioning. And while the result screens are normally just faster in Retail than they are in P06, Nick can speed up this one even more by triggering a text box right as it appears, avoiding the victory animation and fading to black super fast. For P06, the buggy's in a super out-of-the-way location, but thankfully, the team designed it to where just the searchlight bulbs can be destroyed in order to beat the stage, which Shadow can reach with just his homing attack. This route to destroy the 5 searchlights is my one contribution to P06 speedrunning, which I developed back when the Shadow release was new in 2021. Still pretty proud of it. This route also highlights Shadow's air action, the Chaos Spear. In his base form, the hog can shoot up to 5 projectiles that stun enemies, or charge them up to their yellow variant to do 1 point of damage. This can destroy the searchlight bulbs from afar too, so it's pretty cool. Shadow can throw up to 3 spears before either having to touch the ground or homing attack something in order to refresh them, and this move has 2 cool consequences because of it. Firstly, after a throw, the experiment does a small aerial recovery, gaining a bit of height, which is called a spear bounce. This can be chained with subsequent throws to give Shadow what is essentially a super controllable double jump, which will be used a lot throughout the run. Also, Shadow's able to refresh his jump dash if he uses a spear after performing his first one. This can only be done once per 3 spears though. A very cool glitch turned feature of this is pressing the jump dash and spear button at the same time, which skips the spear animation while still getting the second jump dash, called the double homing attack. This is super useful for maintaining Shadow's airspeed, as using a Chaos Spear grinds him to a halt, and is very neat tech, especially when combined with the Legacy type. Unfortunately, this feature is going to be removed in the next release of P06, but Beats came up with a pretty cool idea to sort of maintain its functionality by having the Chaos Spear be a cancelable action, kinda like how Sonic's Bound Attack is. So hopefully it makes it through to the final product. I'm really pushing for it. Now that we're familiar with some of Shadow's strats in both games, and P06 PO6 being slightly ahead of Retail in the race, let's continue on into Kingdom Valley. The Old Castle's opening section puts us in a hang glider in both games, which is on rails in Retail and free range in PO6. Make no mistake though, even in the fan project it's still pretty linear. The only piece of tech here is holding A to move faster, and double tapping it every 3 seconds to get a short boost. I would love it in PO6 if there was some visual feedback when the boost gets refreshed, like a little flash on both of the boosters or something. Once we arrive at the lake, we take control of Rouge once again to do some treasure hunting. While in Retail the keys are in set locations, PO6 gives us the Adventure 1 radar system and 2 extra locations for each key to be in addition to their Retail placements. While there's a 1 in 27 chance to get the best set, I still got a pretty decent one, and grabbing all 3 switches us back to Shadow to open the door to the hover car section. Did I just say door? Well, you know what Retail's doing then. This part's just a straight shot across the water to the springs and the Eagle in both games. Though in Project 06 we can stop for a quick greeting to Chaos Zero. In Section 3, this route's actually pretty similar in both cases. In Retail we get to see our first instance of pause clipping through 2 walls instead of a door to skip a part of the first tower, whereas PO6 uses Chaos Spears and the jump dash to cross the gap instead. Pause clipping also has another use. If you do it into certain dash panels, you can go way above the speed limit and really zoom, which is what Nick's doing here. After the spring spiral, we go up a huge slope and see yet another feature of the tornado kick, maintaining the speed of dash panels. This move does slow us down slightly each time we use it, unlike Sonic's spin kick though, so in this case it's not as useful as the blue guy's move. In Retail, Shadow actually has an extra ability, the edge attack. No joke, that's actually what it's called, which replaces the tornado kick when the hog is moving. It's identical to Sonic's spin kick, so it retains his speed really well. After a bit of platforming and a rail grind on Retail's side, while we destroy some towers on PO6's side, both Shadows complete Kingdom Valley. PO6 is still ahead at this point, especially considering the original game's load times with Nick playing off his 360, but with Shadow's toolkit in Retail being what it is, with more to come, he still has more than enough time to close the distance. Off to Crisis City. The town on fire begins with a really cool spin dash section for PO6 and a buggy ride in Retail. While both are pretty fast, the buggy blew up early for Nick, so he has to do more to get to the end. This is one of my favorite parts of Shadow's story in the fan game. It's so fun rolling down these slopes. Section 2 has some pretty standard movement for the majority of it in both games, until the end. On Retail's side, Nick will be performing the lamb sauce, which I'll leave to him to explain.
From what Gordon has told me, he was looking for a strat in Crisis City regarding rock launches, and there was a chatter in his stream that was like, the next strat you find should be called lamb sauce, and it just so happened to be a rock launch in Crisis City. So yeah, you break out of the automation here, and then you go towards this rock, which is conveniently laid out. We got it, let's go.
Nice! In PO6, we get to utilize Shadow's Chaos Boost level 1, granting him the Chaos Snap. While mostly meant for combat purposes, with him now teleporting between enemies and doing extra damage with the Chaos attack, it does have a platforming use. During a jump dash, if a new homing target comes into range while it's active, Shadow will still warp to it, allowing him to actually reach things that seem out of range. This is used more mundanely early on in the section to cross a big gap, but the final stretch is the big one, and it's the hardest trick in the game. To set it up, we homing attack this item box, use the legacy jump dash into the ground to gain a bunch of speed, then a quick spin dash to gain even more speed. Follow it up with a deceptively precise jump against the camera around the building toward the final rail, then spear, jump dash, spear, spear for a little extra distance, then a final jump dash into snap to get onto the final rail. It's so easy to mess up this trick because with the camera's perspective, it's hard to tell if Shadow's too low for the snap to reach the rail or not, so you kind of have to feel it out and pray for the best. The funny part is that this trick is basically free if you turn off the camera volumes in the options menu, which disables most of the camera pans in the stages and keeps it behind the character. I prefer running with them on though in every other stage, so I'm fine taking the 2-second loss here. Though the skip might not be possible with them on in the last release with some potential changes to the spin dash, but I'm holding out hope. Anywho, Section 3 is super easy in both games, with Retail being a scripted hang glider sequence and PO6 having a small gap between the debris and the kill plane, making it a straight shot. Finally, Section 4 of Crisis City, a unique section Sonic doesn't travel through, is super execution heavy other than Retail being able to do a rock launch similar to the lamb sauce in Section 2. Nick got unlucky with it though, so he had to play through the section normally. We get a break from the craziness for a bit in Flame Core. PO6 plays it the standard way but fast, and we get to see our first instance of Shadow's 100% reward, the Memory Shard Light. This little nugget allows Shadow to supercharge his Chaos Boost when he's collected enough energy cores from enemies to reach a 4th level of it. The abilities level 2 and 3 grant aren't useful in speedruns in either game, so we just ignore them. Thanks to the surplus of enemies on the first combat plateau and the gauge up capsules, which instantly fill the Hog's action gauge and maturity meter, allowing him to level up instantly, we can activate Uninhibited mode. This cutscene ability turned gameplay feature is essentially Shadow's pseudo super form, granting him invincibility, being able to one-shot any enemy, boosting his Chaos Spear into a 5-shot lance that can OHKO enemies from a distance, and other things that aren't important to the speedrun. Just like Chaos Boost, it drains his action gauge, though super quickly compared to level 1, and if it runs out, he gets stunned for 6 seconds to recover. Thankfully, you can extend the time of Uninhibited mode by collecting more energy cores from defeated enemies, which Flame Core has plenty of, so it's no issue maintaining the state. The devs of PO6 were also very generous in not giving Shadow the 6-second penalty if he's in automation or grinding on rails, so ideally we would want to be in one of those two states when the action gauge runs out, as it's hard to maintain in Section 2. But if that's not the case, we can just restart the section to still save some time, which is what happened here because I collected an extra core in Section 1. Shadow doesn't have this upgrade in retail, so Nick utilizes the Chaos Snap, which is a very silly ability in its original incarnation. For the casual player, it can be quite frustrating as all it seems to do is gimp your jump dash and randomly teleport you to enemies sometimes. But what's actually happening here is holding A during a jump dash charges and stores a snap, which is what's going on when Shadow stops in the air here. If you want to use your normal jump dash, just tap and release A instead. Now, your next homing attack will be a snap, which can be used to teleport past walls and doors if there's a homing target on the other side, like Nick does here. Chaos Snap doesn't do this in PO6 because Shadow still has to be able to see the target in order to home in on it, indicated by the reticle if that option's turned on. As for the speedrunner, Chaos Snap is actually, seriously, the most complex and remarkably consistent Sonic ability in the franchise. Our good friend Gordon Ramsay has a 2006-ish word explanation with video guides on how this move works. It's crazy. But for our purposes, Chaos Snap is used to get Nick past the door on the second combat plateau, as it's the only one in the game he can't pause clip through. Strange. In Section 2, PO6 takes advantage of Shadow beginning in the air by using the Chaos Spear to keep him there, then jump dashing over to the rail to skip going all the way around the room. Then we grab the invincibility box, allowing us to do a goofy interaction on this golem where after a homing attack, instead of doing the Chaos attack, we just let Shadow do it to him as the invincibility finishes it off, opening the door. The Sparkles of Doom also stops the lava from slowing us down, so in the next room, instead of going around, we can just spin dash up the lava fall straight to the switch. Following that, we switch to Rouge to hit some orbs, then back to Shadow, we do a cool cage spin dash with him, using the slope of the box to skyrocket upward, which helps us reach the end of the stage a bit quicker. But retail gets a little silly. In the OG game, rails and loops for some reason have an absurd number of Chaos Snap targets specifically, so Nick grabs the gauge up capsule to power up to level 1, readies a snap, attempts to homing attack the rail, and... Don't worry, he's come back before. This is the same principle used in the Mach Speed section of Sonic's Crisis City, where the character's corpse can still interact with objects even after dying. The game doesn't know where to put Shadow when he snaps on the rail due to the 10 to the power of bajillion rail snapping targets, so it just sends him to the origin of the stage, hitting a kill plane, and Nick sets the angle so that Shadow's lifeless body flings into the checkpoint, respawning him there and skipping a good chunk of the section. Wow! From there, Nick performs an out-of-bounds clip in Rouge's section to get to the goal ring, and here I thought pause clipping was the craziest thing Shadow can do. Don't worry, it makes a return in Radical Terrain, as Shadow can clip through the doors to not have to destroy Eggman's locomotive. This puts the section on a pretty strict time limit of 55 seconds, as the Rotund Doctor will get away if you don't get to Section 2 fast enough. In PO6, we play through it the standard way, taking full advantage of the absurd power of the Tornado Kick to defeat enemies and damage the train very quickly. To bring everyone up to speed with this move, as I've gone into detail with it many times on this channel, this Whirlwind of Destruction is the most overpowered move in the game. The hitbox of the kick is a sphere around Shadow that gets increased range 2 additional times by hitting the B button again, has a constant hitbox similar to the spin dash, does 2 points of damage per hit, the beefiest foe in the game has 6 health for reference, can be used on the move, and is part of base Shadow's kit. It's super broken, but it's being rebalanced along with some buffs coming to his other skills in the last release to even out the playing field and bring more variety to his combat. But for now, we can take advantage of its absurd power for the latter half of the game. Section 2 of the train yard is similar in both 06s, get on the bike, destroy the train, which only takes a few bullets in retail compared to PO6. We also use the Easter egg in PO6 that while Shadow is in Chaos Boost, he has infinite ammo on his vehicles, speeding up this part a bit. Welcome to Tornado Kick the Stage. While Aquatic Base has great music and a cool motif with a purple hue for Shadow denoting his pursuit of Mephiles, it's my least favorite stage in PO6. The level design is boring, the enemies go down insanely fast due to the Cyclone of Death, these purple worms are the ones with 6 health by the way, and the little bit of interesting platforming that there is done by Silver. Looking at it more, there's some cool platforming in the linear room after switching from silver, in which we also take advantage of his action gauge filling naturally to transfer it to Shadow and immediately go into Chaos Boost to set up for later. This part's pretty neat, avoiding the balls, snapping to the guys. I wish there was more of this. I guess because casually in retail, Shadow is so slow they felt the long narrow corridors wouldn't be good for him? Who knows? Regardless, Section 2 isn't much better. In fact, it's worse. It's a truncated and watered down, version of Sonic's, with the only saving grace being a cool fight room with uninhibited mode at the end. But that's all it's got going for it. On retail side, Section 1 of course has doors, so I'll let it speak for itself. Section 2 at least has a bike to speed things up, so Shadow doesn't have to do a bunch of... and a somewhat interesting fight route in the final room with Chaos Snap, because while Shadow can clip through doors, the goal ring doesn't spawn until all the enemies are defeated. With that Section 1 though, he saved a bunch of time over PO6. Wave Ocean starts us in a hang glider section in both games, which, fun fact, Shadow can completely avoid in PO6, though it's slower, and gives us a chance to question our reality. In the fan game, Section 2 is pretty standard, showcasing our first instance of Omega, whom we'll be seeing a lot more in the next level. Here we just shoot a couple enemies Sonic Adventure 2 style and hover our way into the Shadow section. This part's actually been expanded in PO6 to have more platforming before entering the hover car, and it's got some pretty sweet movement. The highlights are jumping against the slope terrain, which in the fan project, it for some reason gives you a bunch of extra height. Please don't remove this chaos, it's really cool, allowing us to skip defeating the enemies on this peninsula. We then chain jump dashes into this destructible rock, which in both PO6 and retail, destroying objects with a jump dash refreshes it, so we get to chain 2 more to get to the end island here. Then we hop into the hover car, give Rouge a quick hello, then finish the stage. For retail, Nick takes advantage of Omega being super broken, being the character with the fastest ground speed, yes, even above Sonic, and having a hover which allows you to maintain your altitude if you mash the button and has no limit. This allows him to fly around the invisible wall and hit the spring to finish the stage with the robot. Hitting the spring is important as it makes Omega face the wrong way in the results screen, which reduces the lag on console significantly compared to normal. Also, fun fact, Omega's grind trick, you know, the thing that you do on rails to give yourself a little extra speed, his does nothing, other than give him a few style points, I guess. The move for all characters can be pretty confusing already, as you have to tap the X button to a specific rhythm that doesn't align with the animation to get the speed boost at all, but this is the cherry on top. Thankfully, our robot friend here only has one grind rail to worry about, so it's not a big deal. But this game just keeps on giving, man, I swear. Dusty Desert actually has a way to skip Section 1 in both games. For PO6, the trigger to open the door to the temple is actually next to this breakable wall near it, so we can skip the pillars entirely and just hover straight to it to continue on. For Nick, he has to fly to the door in a certain way to get the hover car to flip over. This destroys it, allowing Shadow to stand on the sand in front of the door to pause clip through it. As for some reason, the sand is a solid rather than a liquid like the rest of the dunes. My ass still hurts from that. Nick could just sit there and let the enemies pelt the hover car until it blows up. But it dies way faster by flipping it, as the game doesn't let Shadow hop out of the vehicle on his own. Inside the ruins in PO6, it's criminal to call this Shadow's Dusty Desert because after a tornado kick in a sand wave room, we switch to Omega for majority of the section. But on the bright side, we get to utilize his improvements in the remake, like his faster hover speed, melee combo, being able to shoot on the move defeating the hordes of enemies, along with a new ability inspired by his cutscene with Mephiles, Gatling gun mode, to really lay on the pain and hit a switch from afar. Switching back to Shadow, we go through what I dubbed the worst room in the game, where even when taking the fastest route, it still feels sluggish and one mess up results in a ton of time loss, then tornado kick another group of enemies, and finally spin dash our way down the tubes to the end. For retail, this section has doors and walls, so our good buddy pause clipping comes back to completely skip Omega, as the room you switch back to Shadow in is just to the left of the initial sand room, making Dusty Desert a very short stage. But of course, that's not the end, because we have one more stage with Rouge in Tropical Jungle. PO6 turns this area into a key hunt, though only 2 of the keys are randomized this time, with the third one always being in a box near the end. So with 3 unique locations for 2 of the keys, we have a 1 in 9 chance to get the best set, which of course I didn't hit, then defeat the enemies at the end for the last key and hit the goal ring to finish the run. For retail, Nick can just glide to the end of the stage since there's no keys to find, though in classic 06 fashion, he can do a couple glitches to speed it up. When climbing into a corner, Rouge freaks out and climbs up very fast, which he can use to get to a high vantage point quickly. Then, if you stop Rouge's glide into the ground at the right time, her fancy ending animation can cause her to skyrocket into the air, called a moon jump, allowing her to get over the lasers and hit the goal ring, 3-ish minutes after I had already completed the game. Yeah, PO6 won in the real time again, but of course that doesn't tell the full story. Removing the loads, PO6 was completed in approximately 22 minutes and 31 seconds, respectable, while retail finished in approximately 20 minutes and 48 seconds, meaning that the loads accounted for 6 minutes of its run versus 50 seconds for the remake, which makes the current score 2-0 on the real time for PO6 and 2-0 on the game time for retail. Yeah, that loading's really saving my ass. Nick and I both played our respective games really well, and it was fun doing the race and seeing once again just how different they were. Huge thanks to him for playing, and who knows, maybe if this video gets enough support, we'll be able to race Silver Story to complete the trio, which is a whole bag of worms, especially on the retail side. Quick shout out to Reverie too for fact-checking my analysis of the retail speedrun tricks. Appreciate the actuallys for this as always. And another thank you to the folks that supported the September Subathon for making this race happen. You can find their credits in the description along with Nick and Reverie's stuff. Can't forget to thank the great ChaosX for the amazing render of both shadows for the thumbnail as well. Always appreciate it, bud. And last but not least, thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.